I'm giving this a solid 9 out of 10, guys. I think that this deck right now is no joke. Probably one of the best plus one counter decks I've seen maybe ever. Every now and then, Wizards of the Coast release a set that I view as exceptional, like Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, Ikoria, and now I think March of the Machine is going to be one of those sets that I remember fondly. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing the Call for Backup Precon from the March of the Machine Commander set. Keep in mind that these videos are designed for players that are brand new to Magic the Gathering. By the end of this video, you're going to learn whether this deck is worth purchasing, how easy it is for new players to play this deck, as well as the monetary value you're going to receive by purchasing this deck of cards. Before we begin, a huge thank you to everyone that subscribed to the channel. I genuinely appreciate it. Keep in mind that if you're not subscribed to the channel, you can subscribe to the channel. And if you do, it's just a really quick and easy way to say thank you to me for making these videos. When we look at this Precon, and mind you, this is the first time I'm ever looking at this Precon, if I'm being honest. So this is just my initial reaction. So the first thing that we see over here is the price. It's about $154.10. Keep in mind, new players, that, you know, as time goes on, these commander decks tend to drop in price. So I'm imagining by the time this deck actually releases, this will not be $154.10. However, there usually is a correlation between how powerful the deck is and its initial price, and the fact that this is above 150 tells me that this deck immediately might be kind of strong. So we're going to look at Bright Palm, who is the commander of this deck, Soul Awakener. Whenever this creature enters the battlefield, put a counter on target creature. If that's another creature, it gains the following ability until the end of turn. Oh, so this backup gives abilities. Whenever this creature attacks, double the number of +1/+1 counters on target creature. That creature can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less this turn. Sounds fun, you know? Counters, when we're talking about counters, we're increasing the power of the creature. Keep in mind that in Commander, when you deal 21 points of commander damage to an opponent, you knock them out of the game. This has, you know, alpha striking potential here with Bright Palm to just one-shot somebody with 22 commander damage, which I think is very beginner friendly. So the first card that we have here is Mikaeus the Lunarch, which is going to get +1/+1 counters onto Bright Palm. Okay, Conclave Mentor is going to basically add an extra +1/+1 counter onto the creatures that gain counters, which can add up over time. Falcon Wrath Exterminator. I know you can pay 3 mana and it deals damage to our creature equal to the number of counters on that creature, which I think is a decent card. I like cards that you can pay mana into and you can just reuse their ability over and over again. It's almost like an enchantment, you know? We have a Genesis Hydra here. I don't know how much mana we're going to be creating inside this commander deck. So unless there's a lot of ramp inside here, I mean, you do get a Hydra with a bunch of +1/+1 counters on it, so you can put a big creature on the board, but this creature doesn't have trample, doesn't have any type of evasion. It's whatever. The Gyre Sage, Evolve. This is going to add mana equal to the number of counters on it. You could potentially generate a lot of mana with this Gyre Sage here, actually, which is pretty cool. Incubation Druid. Okay. Abzan Falconer is going to put a +1/+1 counter, well, on itself, essentially, but each creature you control with a counter on it has flying, which can potentially win games. Champion of Lambhold, speaking about winning games. Creatures with power less than Champion of Lambhold's power can't block creatures you control. So this card basically just makes all your creatures unblockable in a sense, which, you know, tends to work out pretty well when you're trying to win a game. Death Greeter's Champion, Dash. Okay, so essentially Dash means you can cast it, it'll enter the battlefield, it can attack that same turn, and then at the end of your turn it has to go back to your hand. It does have backup 1, so essentially this is just a card that's going to be a creature that's going to give a creature double strike, which, you know, when we're talking about Bright Palm, like, this is actually a pretty decent combo here, because Death Greeter's Champion and Bright Palm together. If Bright Palm is at 7 power and you double, not even, Bright Palm would just need to be at 6 power. It would double, so it would then go to 12 power, and then the double strike with the champion will make it 24 commander damage, which will just knock someone out of the game. So I really like this card here, actually. I think this card here with Bright Palm is pretty good. Fertilid, best card inside the deck. Pay mana to get lands. You keep putting counters on this. Fertilid is one of those cards where people just spend mana to remove the card from the board because your Fertilid just sits there and you just keep paying 2 mana to put lands into play. And people just have to spend removal to remove it because you just keep getting so many lands. It's a really good card. Good Fortune Unicorn. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, put a counter on it. To me, I think this deck really wants to make one creature very strong and not so much have a ton of little creatures be strong. So I would probably take out the Unicorn from this deck. Speaking of literally what I just said, we have Krenko. Krenko says whenever he attacks, well, it's kind of both ways actually. You put a counter on Krenko, then you create a number of 1/1 red goblins equal to Krenko's power. So like I said, literally just a second ago, you want to take a creature and increase its power as much as you can and make it unblockable with Bright Palm, double its power and attack. And Krenko is just I have this commander deck. This is really fun. If you want to build a cool goblin deck, Krenko is really fun. We have Mana Gorger Hydra. Whenever a player casts a spell, put a counter on the Hydra. This is another card that people will just cast removal on this card because it just needs to be removed, you know? It just continuously gets bigger and it has trample, so it's gonna deal damage. And especially the Bright Palm doubling the counters, this card could just be huge very fast. Pride Malkin. Each creature you control with a counter on it has trample. I like it. Rishkar Pima Renegade. Put a counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Each creature you control with a counter on it has tap, add green. So yeah, this is just taking your creatures that have counters. They tap for mana now. Technically, I think you want to be more offensive with this deck, and this card tends to work well in decks where you have a ton of tokens with at least 1 counter, so that you can generate a ton of mana. Inside this deck, if I have a 15/15 creature that's attacking, I don't think I would want to tap that 15/15 creature with trample for 1 green mana. Wood Elves, just gonna put a land into play. Battle Priest, I like this. Each creature you control with a counter on it has lifelink. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's just gaining your life while you're dealing a ton of damage. Armorcraft Judge is going to draw cards, okay? Brawn is going to give your creatures trample. I like the amount of trample that I'm seeing inside this deck right now, because it doesn't matter how big your creatures are if you can't deal damage with them. Whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a counter on Forgotten Ancient. Another way just to gain counters. This is another card that requires removal. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm liking the fact that I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this deck and I'm saying like, this card requires removal, just because like when you put a lot of cards inside your deck that have to be answered, it just leaves your opponents in a position where they don't have removal when you're gonna play the card that's gonna win the game. You know, just something to think about when you're building commander decks in the future. High Sentinels of Arashin. High Sentinels gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with a counter on it. You can pay 4 mana to put a counter target creature. I mean, I like it because you could just pay 4 mana, put 1 counter on a creature so you can hold up mana if you need to. I don't know if that 1 counter, I mean, I think you play this if you're turning this commander deck into just like a Voltron deck where you just want to attack with your commander and just deal as much damage as you can with your commander as fast as possible. I think that could be reasonable. We have a Mindless Automaton. You can just remove 2 counters from this to draw a card. And with the way this deck works, this could turn into a pretty decent draw engine, especially with the Forgotten Ancients that are basically going to be putting counters back onto this card as you remove them. So Forgotten Ancient and Mindless Automaton combo pretty well together. Restoration Angel, I like the idea of it where we're protecting our creatures. Enters the battlefield, you can exile a non-angel and then return to the battlefield. When it leaves the battlefield, it has to re-enter the battlefield, and when it re-enters, any counters in it had are now gone. I would just take this card out for a card that says an instant speed spell that just says give target creature indestructible. Oh, Chulane and Halar. Whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, Chulane and Halar deal that much damage to target opponent. Yo, this card's kind of a bomb inside this deck because depending on the number of counters you have on a card, we're talking about like if a creature has 10 counters on it and then it doubles when this is on the board and it goes to 20, you're just gonna deal 10 damage to target opponent. This card can win games. Oh, Haru, I know I would take this card out of the deck. I mean, when a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, you create a 1/1 white spirit with flying. I think that's cool. You can just, if somebody wipes the board, you get creatures back for 5 mana for a 3/3, you know. I don't know. I just think this card would cost too much mana to play. This card wins games, guys, right here. Speaking of cards that need to be removed, whenever one or more counters are put on Constable of the Realm, exile up to 1 target non-land permanent until Constable of the Realm leaves the battlefield. It's a fantastic card. The Elite Scale Guard, whenever another card that wins games, whenever a creature you control attacks with a counter on it, tap target creature defending player controls. I will say that the Scale Guard tends to work inside decks that have a ton of creatures, because imagine like I'm attacking you with 1 creature with a counter on it and I tap 1 creature down, but imagine I have 15 creatures with 1 counter on it and I'm tapping everything on the board down. Flame Rush Rider, you create a token as a copy of the target attacking creature. Guardian Scale Lord, backup, flying. Whenever this creature attacks, return target non-land permanent with converted mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, or X is this creature's power. It's kind of like a Sun Titan. Juniper Order Ranger, whenever something gains a counter, this gains a counter. This doesn't have trample. And at 5 mana, I would probably take this card out of the deck. Colonian Hydra. Wow. Whenever this attacks, double the number of counters on each creature you control. Guys. Look at this combo. You combo Colonian Hydra with Chulane and Halar. This is going to double the number of counters on each creature you control. This card goes off with that card, man. Chulane and Halar is a bomb. Sun Scorcher Regent, whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a counter on Sun Scorcher Regent and you gain 1 life. I like gaining life. I would probably keep this inside the deck. Conclave Sledge Captain. Backup 1, backup 1, backup 1. Okay, happens 3 times. Trample. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, put that many counters on it. I like it. I think it's a cool card. 6 mana. You know, Enduring Scale Lord, whenever 1 or more counters are put on another target creature you control, put a counter on the Scale Lord. Yeah, it has flying, so I mean 6 mana is a lot, but there's got to be there has to be something to put a lot of lands into play, because a lot of these creatures cost 5 mana. This one costs 6. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature you control with a counter on it, so it's probably going to cost 2. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each creature you control with a counter on it. So literally just talking about things costing a lot of mana, and then they literally have a card right here that reduces the value of the creatures you're casting, so they are aware of it. We have the Mirror Style Master. Whenever this creature attacks, for each attacking modified creature you control, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of that creature. You might want to play this to bait removal. Slurk. I got a Slurk commander deck. Slurk is cool. Basically says that whenever Slurk or another creature you control dies with a counter on it, you put a counter on each other creature you control. These cards tend to work in a deck where you have a ton of creatures gaining counters, not necessarily just like 1 creature gaining a counter. I would take Slurk out of this commander deck. Triskelion, we got infinite combos or something. We got Triskelion, you remove a counter from this and you deal 1 damage to any target. So if this has infinite counters on it, which I'm not sure if I see a way to do that right now, you can do infinite damage to anybody and everybody. The Emergent Woodworm. Whenever this creature attacks, look at the top X cards of your library. X is its power. You may put a permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest of the cards in the bottom of your library. Okay, so this happens every time. I mean, 7 mana, that's a lot. That's a lot. I would just be like Doomblade. We have a ton of cards here that are plane chase cards, which I think for new players might be a bit confusing. So we're not going to go over the plane chase cards. Just be aware that they exist and they add a little bit of spice to a game of Commander. But just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over these cards. I'll go over them in a future video if you want. We have Swords to Plowshares, which is just amazing and removal, 1 mana, exile a creature. We have Dramoka's Command, prevent all damage, instant or sorcery spell will deal this turn. Yeah, I mean, at 2 mana, it's pretty decent. I would take this card out of the deck. Inscription of Abundance, another way to fight. Dramoka's Command fights, this also fights. I mean, you're gonna have creatures with a ton of power. So I think these cards actually work pretty well. I'll take that back. Return to Nature. Okay, it's pretty good. Cultivate, putting mana into play, it's good. Generous Gift, that's a really good piece of removal. We also have Heaven and Earth, which is going to deal X damage to each creature with flying. You're gonna need a good amount of mana to cast that. You know, it is an instant, so you can do that at instant speed for the Heaven portion of it. I would take that card out of the deck. Hinder Vines, prevent all combat damage. So that should be like a one-sided board wipe. I think that's pretty decent, this Hinder Vines over here. We have Inspiring Call that draws you cards and gives your creatures indestructible. Kadama's Reach, you know, lands. I would take this card out of the deck because this exiles creatures. This does have the creatures re-enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on them, but any of the counters that they had, they lose. Path of the Pyromancer. Discard all the cards in your hand. Yeah, take that card out of the deck. I don't even need to read the rest. You play this in Riel the Everwise. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Fractured Power Stone, Psionic Resonator. Wow, with Bright Palm, that's actually kind of a bomb. Commander's Sphere and Ichor Elixir. Yeah, I think 4 mana to tap for 2. I think this is a fantastic card. I don't know how much dice we're rolling in this deck though, so I would probably take this out and just add a better mana rock. Together Forever, Ion Storm, Flame Shadow Conjuring, which is going to put another creature onto the battlefield. That's a copy of a creature you control. Uncivil Unrest, non-token creatures you control have Riot. Ooh, this is a good card here. I mean, there's a reason why it's $12. If a creature you control with a counter on it would deal damage to a permanent or player. What? Dude, this is the best card inside the deck. Dude, guys, this deck is awesome. This deck is so good. That's such a cool card. Like, just because of this alone, this deck is worth buying. It doubles damage, guys. Guys, Bright Palm is gonna be strong, guys. Bright Palm is no joke. It doubles its own counters, has ways to gain double strike inside this deck like we saw earlier with the champion. We have ways to double your damage over here. We have ways to increase the counters with, you know, the Forgotten Ancient. I'm telling you guys, like, the only thing, if I had to be a critic right now and just be a nitpicker and be annoying, I'm not sure if there's 39 creatures inside this deck, guys. And if I'm looking over here, like, my gut tells me a lot of these creatures cost 4 or 5 mana and above, which is a lot. I mean, we have 1, 2, 3, 7 with the Cultivate. Yeah, I think you need to get enough mana to do all the things this deck wants to do. You need at least 12 ways to ramp. I mean, you do have the creatures that ramp as well that I'm not counting, like the Fertilid, like the Incubation Druid. So there are ways to, you know, get more mana. Dude, guys, I'm really excited for this one. You know, to recap everything, I think this deck, because we have the lands over here as well. No, we're not going to go over because lands are lands. If I had to give this a review score, I'm giving this a solid 9 out of 10, guys. I think that this deck right now is no joke. Probably one of the best +1/+1 counter decks I've seen maybe ever. This deck really has the ability to one-shot with creatures. Whenever you're talking about doubling counters, guys, like, that's kind of absurd. You know, it can be going from 1 to 2, or you can go from 5, dealing 10 damage out of nowhere, you know, on top of not even counting the creature's power. So, and in combination, that the fact that your commander is the thing that's doubling the counters is something that, like, could just be nasty. I think that for players that have been playing the game for a long time, you know, I would probably rate this an 8 out of 10. It is still amazing. I just think that, like I was mentioning earlier about the Semester's End there are cards in here that us as experienced players would look at and we're just like, oh, we're just gonna take this out. And it's not a problem that you got to swap it out and put something else inside there. I just think that they're just obvious things that you would want to include and not include. And there's cards inside here that work better inside a commander deck that has a ton of creatures with a minimal amount of counters. And you're going to want to take those out for cards that are really, just focus on making one creature really big and protecting one creature and not so much just spreading counters everywhere. That's going to be the review. It looks like the next commander deck that we're going to be reviewing is the Cavalry Charge commander deck. So you can subscribe to the channel if you want to see that review in the future. I hope that you enjoyed this video. And keep in mind that we're going to be doing a sale, okay, for a commander deck on eBay. And this is a commander deck that I actually built on stream, which is this Chulane commander deck. The cards are all over here. I'm going to be selling this deck on eBay. You'll know when it's live on my channel. And I'm going to take 75% of the amount that this deck makes, and I'm donating it to a charity that's going to feed dogs. It's like the Precon Love nonprofit foundation so that we can help dogs and cats have some food and potentially give them families to live with. 25% of the sale I'm going to keep so that I can just pay for shipping and then pay for more cards to do more donations essentially like this in the future. So if you're interested in potentially purchasing a Chulane commander deck and you're a new player to the game and you want a deck that you're most likely going to be able to win a lot of games with, just keep in mind that I'm going to be doing donations of commander decks through this channel to dog charities through your purchase, essentially. So if you're interested, you can subscribe to the channel. You can comment and join the Discord if you want more information. All the information is going to be in the Discord. All you'd have to do is click the link in the description below, and the Discord will be there, and you can talk to me whenever you want, essentially. Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you look forward to the other videos and the other reviews. Okay, always remember, all right, eat healthy. Okay, work out every single day, all right? And most importantly, you got to remember to believe in yourself, all right? Peace out, people.